Leave a comment where you are listening in the world. Please subscribe if you enjoy our content. Enjoy. No honorary, this happened a few weeks ago. I am sitting in a cafe parking lot trying to figure out what the F just happened last night. Background information. I downloaded Tinder to give men another go. Maybe if I adjust my age range and find someone a little older than me, I'll find someone who's better than average to mattress mambo with. Here's where Kyle comes into play. We've been talking for a week. East Coast transplant, country-ish, truck driving, tattooed, physically fit, well-groomed, busy with his career, doing his own thing sort of dude. The second half of his descriptors are my type. I know, but your girl is desperate. He's also a veteran. We get along over text, fun, friendly banter. We FaceTime a few times and generally seem to, for a lack of a better word, vibe. Further into the week, our conversation gets really flirty. We seem to have similar interests, and the mention of a safe word comes up. Green flag. I'm okay with that. We both live a little outside of a big city, so we got a hotel and met up in the city. I am more familiar with the city than Kyle is. I've parked, and I go meet him, and we find a place for him to leave his truck. After we park, he asked me to get his gun from the glove box while he's making sure everything is in his bag. I live in a state where concealed carry/owning a gun is pretty normal, and he comes from one similar. This wasn't weird to me, but feels relevant to the story. I jokingly said, "I don't want my fingerprints on your gun," as I handed him his gun, only touching the sleeve it was in. I hope he jokingly said, "This one is not my burner gun." Yikes number one. On our way to the bar, the sidewalk is packed, and we are trying to get indoors. Kyle touched the back of this guy and said, "Hey, excuse me." As I walked by the man that Kyle touched, the man says, "Don't f-ing touch me ever again." Kyle turns around and yells, "Well then don't stand in the fucking way." Yikes. We get food and 2 beers, and this is when I realize Kyle is a little more toxic gender roles and conservative than I realized. Not a big deal. I love Red Dead Redemption. This man can still make a comeback. We head home after getting drinks and dinner. We turn on the TV, we're sitting on the couch, and pretty much lots of heavy petting turns into kissing turns into making babies. This man and I go for rounds. Imagine a ping pong game, and no body is finishing, but we just keep tying the game. Someone's gotta win by 2. Deuce. The sex is good. No safe word has been dropped. It's just casual good 2 horny people sex. I think we started at 11:30 p.m., and the third round ended at like 1:20 a.m. After the water break, round 4 starts up, and everything is going fine. I'm going to try and be as detailed as possible without giving too much information out there. This man is standing up, I am laying on my back on the couch going down on him. He's clearly enjoying it. I can hear and physically tell. I kid you not. I don't know how to say this. I don't know how to type these words out. But he peed in my mouth. I literally got up and spit the shit out everywhere and asked him what the fuck. He laughed. Kyle says something to the effect of, "I like doing things that catch people off guard." Clearly Kyle. After that, night is ruined. I go shower alone, and it's obvious that I'm like not into him. I go to bed, this man snores like a f-ing chainsaw. Now you're asking, why don't you get the fuck up and run away in that moment? The accumulation of red flags made it feel safer to stay and get the hell out later. Next morning, I pack my shit up and say goodbye, and he asks if we're gonna hang out again. Oh my god. Now I'm drinking coffee, and I'm about to go pick up my little brother from school. For starters, this happened about a week ago. Lockdown has been very boring for many, so I, 18 male, in my ultimate world of wisdom, decided to give the good ol' Tinder a try. It was an average morning, and I got a match with, let's call her Sandra. By about 2 p.m. we had been talking back and forth before she ultimately asks for my Snapchat, to which I albeit stupidly complied. Time passes by, and I'm going on with my day when it comes to be time to walk the doggo. I tell her I'm going on a walk and that I will message later. Anyways, about half an hour into my walk I receive a red snap. For those not familiar with Snapchat, this is a picture message. To my absolute surprise and horror, it's a picture of the front of my street. I replied to what I was only hoping is a freak coincidence. After all, Sandra claimed she had lived about 45 minutes away from my house, which I had never disclosed the location of. I asked what she was doing, and she said she wanted to come to get to know me in person, and explained that she'd looked at my Snapchat maps and decided to drive down. Stupidly willing to give a girl with a bit of commitment a chance, I decided to tell her to come meet me on my dog walk as a little get-to-know-each-other stroll. However, as a car pulls into the car park, I think nothing of it until the car pulls up to me, and announces herself as Sandra, looking not even a tiny bit like her photos. I'm not a person to judge, as even I can understand that you can edit photos to your advantage, etc. However, she did not look the tiniest bit like her photos and was very overweight, which I again have no problem with. However, I'm just not attracted to overweight people whatsoever. Next red flag was her refusal to get out of the car, which came as a surprise, as she's been so keen to come see me. I can understand it, though, as it's going meeting someone new, then going on a countryside walk. Anyways, I come to the conclusion that I should walk home and tell her to stay there so that I can meet her again, and so that she didn't know my house number for the exact reason that occurred. I walk off towards my house, and as I go around the corner, I look behind me to see her slowly following behind. I proceed to do the only thing my head tells me to do, and book it down the path, and make it to my house with her car out of sight. I sit in my room, and not knowing what else to do, I turn off my location, and prepare a message to apologize for not being able to make it out. That's when the doorbell goes, and I jump to my feet to see her car in my driveway. I practically flew down the stairs, only to find her talking to my mum, explaining how I'd invited her over for tea. I didn't. Obviously, my mum, being the kind-hearted person she is, happily invites her in, as our tea was already prepared. What preceded was the most awkward, horrendous, and every other bad word of a meal I have ever endured. Topped off when she admitted to lying about her age on her Tinder profile, and proclaimed she was 27 as opposed to the 18 on her profile. This might not seem so bad, but for someone who's recently turned 18, 27 is a huge jump, and not something I would have agreed to. My mum was horrified and ended up making an excuse that we had to go to some family event. I used to be able to smell a scam from a mile away, but I have been left embarrassed and ashamed in falling for something that was clearly dodgy, and sadly I was blinded by my own greed. Matched with a girl from Tinder, cute Chinese girl near me called, and red flag 1. We spoke for a week, then moved to WhatsApp, where she was using a Hong Kong phone number, red flag 2. I questioned the number, and she said she had just traveled back to Shanghai, but is a student in my area, and was returning in a month, red flag 3. At this point I was certain she was fake, but over the next week she would speak about her day as normal, would send pictures/videos of her going out to places, and would send voice messages, as if we were close, which slowly gained my trust. I tried to reverse image search everything, but I couldn't find any results. Around week 3 she casually brought up cryptocurrency. Now I was already very invested in crypto for a while, and she had an incredible amount of knowledge on the subject. She mentioned that she sold all her Bitcoin, which was roughly 1 million USDT worth, and had invested in an ICO for a cryptocurrency called PBM. I tried to search for PBM everywhere, but it didn't exist. I questioned her about it, and she said that this was an exclusive ICO, which was going to be China's only cryptocurrency, which is currently only being shared among the big Chinese companies such as Alibaba, Tencent, UnionPay, Jingdong, etc. She only had access to it because her uncle works for Alibaba, and also sent me a Forbes article which confirmed all of this. She says she can give me access to it if I click on the link she sent me with an invitation code to be given access to the platform. The platform was called BFF.cash, dodgy name red flag 4. I look online and can't find it anywhere other than this link, but I register anyway, and it looks like a lot of work has gone in it to make it look as real as possible. The brand of the platform was called EQ Exchange, and it gave you wallet which allowed you to invest in the major cryptocurrencies such as BTC and ETH with accurate price index. This is major red flag 5. You could only deposit by withdrawing crypto from another crypto wallet, which was in my case Binance, and send a screenshot of the successful withdrawal. I didn't know how to do this, and to no surprise to me now, she was able to give exact instructions on how to do it. I only deposited 1,000 USDT to start with, and I would try to withdraw back to Binance just to test it, and it was transferred back into my Binance wallet within 20 minutes. This gained my trust in the platform and put the money into the ICO, and it would get me about 300 PBM as the value was around 3 USD. The next couple of days she was boasting how she had bought 1 million PBM when it first launched a month earlier at a price of 0.002 USDT, and how I should buy more because the value is increasing quickly before the ICO ends on the May 24th, 2021. Over the next week I got carried away and ended up investing 50,000 USDT. Dumb I know. We kept talking for another week and talking about how rich we were going to be, but then she started becoming more aggressive about investing more, and I should max out credit cards, get a bank loan, and use my family's money, which finally smacked me out of her spell, and realized that I can't actually withdraw my money from this ICO. I panic and search everywhere about possible scams with these details, but I couldn't find anything for ages until I came across a translated Bulgarian article that matches everything. I'm devastated. I don't question her straight away. Instead, I tried to scam her back by convincing her to transfer 50,000 USDT to my BFF.cash wallet, refused to do it on Binance, and then take it for myself, but they quickly realized and froze my account. I played dumb to her about it for a while, but she eventually blocked me, and now I'm here. I know I will get, if you're dumb enough to fall for it, then you deserve to lose your money, which is true, but I really needed to get this out there for anyone about to go through the same situation. The obligatory, this actually happened last Friday. I met up with a guy from Tinder, we'll call him Tim, for a date. It was actually going pretty well. We had stuff in common, and didn't seem as awkward as most dates. Drinks start flowing, I'm having a good time, and the night moves on. After we got to the third bar, he looks at his phone and says, "Hey, my best friend, we'll call him Steve, is in the area. Would you mind if he stopped by for a drink?" I was having a good time, and didn't care, so told him to invite him over. We proceed to another bar, where Steve is going to meet us. I then kick Tim's ass at Street Fighter, and am still having fun, oblivious to what's about to happen. In walks Steve and the world stops. I immediately recognize the guy. How, you ask? Because a week prior I was talking with Steve on Tinder. We made tentative plans to meet. When the day came and he contacted me to confirm plans, I just wasn't feeling it. So I was a hole of a human, and blew him off by not responding, and just deleted him. Trust me, I know it was an awful thing to do, and karma chewed my ass right back. So Steve walks up to us, and it's awkward as F. Tim introduces us, and instead of saying the usual hi, he starts laughing and shaking his head. He says he needs a drink and walks off. I immediately tell Tim what happened, and take credit for being a shit stain for doing that to Steve. Tim just awkwardly laughed and didn't say much. Steve returns, "It continues to be weird as F, I deserve it." I try to cut the tension, and just straight up apologize to Steve for being a douchebag. Tension got worse. Nobody was saying anything. I had to get out of that situation for a bit, so I announced that I'm going to use the ladies' room. It's notoriously nasty in this joint, so I leave my jacket behind. When I came back, both Tim and Steve were gone, and they took my jacket with them. Thankfully, bartenders saw the whole thing, so didn't charge me for their tab. I tipped him well to start being a decent human. So to sum up, I blew off a Tinder date, then a week later ran into him, whilst on a date with his best friend. Got ditched, and my jacket was stolen. To clarify for several people, and the haters. I didn't stand Steve up, or leave him waiting anywhere. We had nothing solidly planned, and I just didn't respond when he messaged to make plans. I feel like I took the higher road and not only told Tim about it, but I straight up apologized to Steve as well. 2. I still highly doubt the whole thing was planned. Why would Tim spend several hours with me having what seemed to be a decent time, just to mess with me and ditch me? He honestly seemed like a good guy, and up until the ditching and jacket incident. 2 weeks ago, I met a guy on Tinder, Victor. In his profile photo, he had brown hair that was so dark, it almost looked black, styled in a sort of half-up, half-down style. His neck was tattooed with a spider web behind his ear, with a web trailing down to showcase a realistic spider biting his neck. He had other tattoos, but they all seemed to be abstract compared to this one, seemingly just done any old way. He wore red contacts, but it almost looked like he had red eyes with a hint of brown that resembled honey in the sunlight. As his pink lips held a lollipop stick in his mouth, he was taking a selfie in the mirror of a public bathroom. I was about to swipe right, but decided to check his bio to be sure he didn't list anything that could be considered a red flag. He was my age, 23. His bio simply stated, "I hope you like vampires, because I'm a neck biter who doesn't mind the taste of blood." While all my friends found it cringy when I told them about it, I found it arousing. I have a thing for vampires, if you couldn't already guess. So this was a win for me. We got to messaging, and he expressed interest in hooking up. After some diligent planning, we agreed to start off going out to get to know each other. We wanted to take things slow, understanding boundaries and personalities before we began doing anything. Our first meet-up was at the local Arby's, where we talked over sandwiches and curly fries. We had an incredible time. We shared many of the same kinks, interests, and boundaries. It was as if the sex gods had sent this gorgeous man in my direction for a reason. The night after that, I had began experiencing difficulties sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, it was as though something had triggered my beagle, Riley. He would start panicking, barking and growling at my window. Every time I would go check, there would be nothing in sight. I figured perhaps the shadow of a nearby tree was upsetting him, so I put him in his crate for the night. I could hear his muffled barking downstairs for a few minutes, but soon it stopped. In the morning, I discovered something on my window when I went to open the blinds. There was a hand print, as if someone was attempting to break in. However, they seemed to be bloody. The blood seemed as though it was dripping from the middle and index finger, then dried there. I rushed outside in my pajamas in the freezing cold to see if perhaps something had just rusted, but when I looked, the hand print was no longer there. In disbelief, I went back inside and there wasn't anything. I chalked it up to nothing, assuming my half-asleep body was still adjusting to the morning light. I just went about my life until Victor and I had met up again. Something odd seemed to happen when we were talking, though. He asked me how the advertisement I was working on had come out. I work at a small bank as the graphic design department. I create all-out advertisements, signs for our 4 locations, and promotional photos for social media. I had been working on an advertisement over the last week, but I had never told him that. At least, I don't recall telling him about it. Regardless, I answered the question no matter how odd it seemed to be. Again, the night after our meetup, strange things happened. When I sent Riley to go potty that night, he wouldn't come in when I was calling him, which is very unlike him. He's very well trained and somewhat clingy at bedtime, so I walked into the yard to find him staring at the fence. This fence separates my yard with my next-door neighbor's yard. Riley was frozen in place, staring at a figure. This figure had on a hood, and I couldn't see his face because of the darkness. My neighbor's back porch light went out the other night, and they had yet to fix it, whereas mine doesn't really go far enough to see past this fence. The only thing I did see was 2 hands, their fingernails red like they were stained with blood. I screamed bloody murder, grabbing Riley and slamming the back door on the way back in. I locked all my doors and windows. After calling both police and my neighbors about the situation, everyone was getting my story. The police informed me that they could not do anything as I didn't see much and neither of us have cameras to prove anyone was there. They told me it was probably a childish prank from another neighbor's kid. I felt so crazy in that moment, thinking perhaps I have started hallucinating or that my eyes played tricks on me. That was, until the neighbor's wife let out her own scream of bloody murder that mixed with gut-wrenching sobs. We rushed over to their backyard, where the neighbor was hugging her now dead cat. I never knew they had a cat, but that's because he never had been let outside. The cat was covered in blood, said to be stabbed 7 times. I didn't sleep that night. I spent it sobbing, hugging Riley. It was clear the person had bad intentions, and I just narrowly escaped him while also saving my baby. I told no one in my life about this, because I do not want them thinking that I am crazy. I know there is proof that last night was real. I'm still questioning if maybe I was seeing things, and it was some sort of spiritual sign to save my dog, even if I could not save the neighbor's cat. Victor was like a rock to me, giving something to look forward to as the traumatic visuals of that figure haunted my everyday movements. We set up a date to hook up, wanting to try something with blood and needles. I was excited as I have never had anything of this. I always loved exploring new kinks and fetishes. At work, it was clear I wasn't well as my boss sent me home early. On my way home, I stopped by a gas station to fill up and get some snacks. While I was pumping gas into my car, I heard my phone buzz in my purse. I fished it out of there quickly, seeing a weird text from my neighbor. She told me there was a weird man trying to break into my house, but when the police came there was no sign of him. However, a very small portion of my lawn had been burnt by a cigarette left by the driveway. Now I was freaked out. Why is this happening to me? Who is targeting me? Does this mean everything from before was true, and I'm the one this man is after? When I asked for a description, it was the same hooded figure from before, but when the neighbor asked to know who he was, he smiled at her with a blistered face and pink teeth. She screamed, which alerted another neighbor to call the police. I now could not stay at my home, so with a friend, we headed to my house to gather my essentials, and I stayed with her for a couple days. I brought Riley along. Everything had seemed all right, nothing else had happened. However, the day I was meant to return home, a car followed me to work, driving away when I pulled into the parking lot. At first, I didn't question it as my friend has an apartment and assumed he was part of the complex, taking a similar route to work. Looking back, it had to be that guy. When I got back home, my living room was wrecked. Nothing was stolen, no signs of a break-in, just trashed. Now, I was utterly terrified to stay in this house, as someone clearly had something out for me. I was not going to take the risk of sleeping here and getting murdered in my sleep. I told Victor about everything, and he offered to let me have his spare room. I protested, insisting I can get a motel. He refused, promising he had a gun if he needed to defend me from anyone. I reluctantly agreed, but his house was very welcoming. The decor was a mix of gothic but modern, yet it had all seemed to homey. Riley seemed a little uneasy, however. I assumed it was the stress of the stalker and having to constantly move. We hooked up the next night. It was amazing. He pleased me in a way I had not ever dreamed of, soon becoming addicted to him. We did it a couple more times afterwards. Every time we did, he wore me out and I would need a nap or to rest from the night. So, after some aftercare, Victor tucked me in and said he would wake me up in the morning when breakfast was prepared. At 3 a.m., I heard a scream. A dog's scream. My stomach dropped as I scrambled out of bed to rush downstairs, thinking Riley fell off something or got hurt somehow. When I got to the bottom of the stairs, there was a man. He had patches of hair on his head, red fingernails, blisters all over. He was leaning over Riley. I yelled for Victor, hoping he was in the bathroom. Only, the man turned to look at me, and I screamed. The man was Victor. The same blistered man at my house, the same red fingernails from my neighbor's yard, and those pink teeth. He looked like he wasn't ready for me to see him. Riley was on this carpet, bleeding. He had been drinking his blood, the knife still in his pocket. He reached for it when I ran back upstairs and barricaded myself in his bedroom, the only room with a lock. The lock was locked with furniture in front of the door for good measure. I noticed a blood stain on his carpet under a chair in this room. This wasn't my first time. Yes, he had a vial of my blood from our session, but I thought we had used it. I found 4 more in the closet when I emptied it. I knew I was in danger, especially as he pounded on the door, growling out my name. He soon resorted to stabbing the door, hoping I was behind it. I rushed to get dressed and grab my stuff as I heard him begging to be let in, saying he needs my blood to cure him. He needed my nutrients. He promised he would be good to me if I just supplied him with his medicine. I didn't listen, especially as he punched a hole through the door. I was out the window by the time he was peeking through the door, screaming my name. I had thrown my stuff before me, which somewhat cushioned my fall from the room. My ankle is fucked from the fall, but it didn't matter. I ran to my car and threw my stuff in the back as I saw the knife get stabbed through the front door. He ran after my car as I sped away. In the ER, I explained everything to the nurses and the police. I've been tested for STDs and STIs. I haven't gotten the results back yet. I gave the police my statement, in which they informed me Victor's house was abandoned. No one had lived there in 5 years, and his Tinder was gone too. I only had a photo of his neck and chest, nothing of his face. I don't think they're ever going to find him, if he even exists. I do not feel safe. I've quit my job, moved, dyed my hair. I've even gotten filler hoping it changed my appearance some. I'm a wreck without Riley, but the image of that man drinking his blood haunts me from ever wanting another beagle again. I'm in a motel right now, as I hop between them hoping I'll never be discovered. I'm running out of savings, which terrifies me. My mom has offered up my old room if I ever need to move back home, and has suggested counseling. I cannot leave the motels, I just can't. I don't know if I'll survive, which is why I write to the internet in the hopes that if he does find me, at least the world will know I am not crazy. That my story can be a cautionary tale. Not everyone is as they seem. They can ruin your life in an instant. You can run into Victor at any time, and I cannot let another soul be cursed with being tortured by him too. So please, be careful who you meet online, especially Tinder. So I matched with this girl on Tinder. We chatted for a bit, then it headed on over to Snapchat. I mean, she was gorgeous. She matched with her Tinder profile pics, so that was great. She sends out a snap story saying she's bored, who wants to hang out. I just got off work, and I threw out a message, sure, let's hang out. She says okay, so I tell her I'll shower and head into town. All was good. When I was ready, I snapped her and said, what's your address? She calls me immediately and is freaking out 'cause I'm from Tinder and to tell her I'm not some murderer. So I calmed her down and she gave me her addy. I was on Z-Way. I arrive at this girl's house, obviously a low-income housing situation. Whatever, I picked my ex up from a women's shelter while she brought her 9-month-old with. So I'm a bit of a red flag collector. I've been in worse situations, right? So I knock on the door. She opens the door and says, come in, I'm almost ready. So I I walk into the worst possible house I've ever seen. Clothes everywhere, there was not a clean spot to be seen anywhere. Yeesh. Whatever she's a dime, I'll do a lot to let this happen. So she comes down the stairs sniffling a lot. She says she's allergic to her perfume. All G. So we hop in my whip. I say, have you eaten? She says no, so we decide to go to a local joint for some food. We arrive on scene, we sit down and she asks if it's okay that I'm paying, and if she orders a drink or two. So that's cool, whatever, sure. So she orders a double drink, then another. So we get the food, eat up and decide to hit the road, Jack. I said, do you want to go for a walk? She agrees. She asks to hit a liquor store on the way, so I'm like, sure. We head in and she asks if I'll foot the bill. I said sure. She grabs 2 full-ass bottles of wine. I said, like, I know I'm ugly, but I'm not 4 shots plus 2 bottles of wine bad, am I? Anyways, we leave with the wine. We also stop at the 7-Eleven, and I purchase smokes for her. We get down a walking path beside a creek and sit on some rocks to watch the creek. She says, I forgot my smokes in your whip. May you go get them. Sure, I say. I run back to grab them. That yes, I get back, she's gone. Vanished. I'm like, oh shit, okay. Then I see her squatting in a bush, pissing. She yells, don't look at me. So I look away and go back to sitting. She decides to call her dad on the tele and gets me to talk to him. Turns out he works with a guy I work with. Super F. So we get off the phone and sit beside each other. As we chillin', she's creeping closer, and so am I. So we are shoulder to shoulder, her leg on mine. So we chillin', then I feel this like something on my leg. I'm like, WTF, I look down. This chick's pissing right beside me and on me. So she apologizes and says, let's go back to my place. So off to her home we go, hit the bed, throw on Step Brothers, and we going at it in her bed. She says, let's get naked, and like, finally. So she says to give her a hug. She just wants to be held, naked. She starts crying. I'm like, oh boy. She then says, I don't deserve this, and we get back to kissing, and then she starts going down on me. She's starting to give me head, and I'm starting to get to full mast. She stops, grabs her phone, calls someone random, then asks me to take her to a local hotel. I agree, and I'm standing outside looking at my car being like, I should just run and get the F out. I decide to stay. She comes out wearing the skimpiest dress I ever did see. It's all hanging out. She hops in my ride, asks if I'll lend her $40. So sure, whatever. So we are driving to the bank. She's literally twerking her bare ass in my face as I'm driving. Then she takes my hand and shoves it in her dress, telling me to squeeze her chest super hard and shoving my fingers downstairs. So we get to the hotel. She breaks down, starts crying. I'm like, I need to get her out the car and get the F out. So we tried one side of the motel to find the room. There is a 3/4-ton truck with a flat deck trailer in the parking lot. She starts climbing over it, and her dress pops up, and all her lady bits are out. I'm like, F me. She comes back and says, wrong part of the motel. So she finally figures out where to go, and as she slips inside, I bail. I'm out. We are about 3 miles from her place, a chilly spring evening. She ain't got no shoes on, and this skimpy little dress. I'm driving home, and she calls me and asks where I went. I said I got called into work. She called me for 3 hours asking where I was. She was cold and had no way home. I sent this to Bad Dates of Melbourne on Facebook, but I'll copy and paste it here as they couldn't share. They thought it was drug-related. Most likely was. I had been meaning to meet this Tinder date for several weeks, but things would always crop up, as luck would have it. She was a pretty attractive girl whose personality seemed to match my dry and sarcastic humor. The first 2 occasions as I was unable to attend, and then on 2 occasions she used her bail cards too. There was no animosity with either of us. We agreed to meet for the 5th attempt and joked about the date likely being the worst Tinder date of all time, and that if the date indeed sucked, it would make for a good dinner time story with friends. Well, I got more than I bargained for. We opted to meet outside Naked for Satan, a bar, as a starting point. She mentioned she would be at after work drinks, and then would meet me at 8.30. So it's 8.30, and I am outside Naked for Satan. In the space of 15 minutes, I had 11 missed calls and various other calls from her that made little to no sense. Every call would be answered, and she would say, where are you? I'm in an Uber, and I don't know where to go. She sounded delusional on the phone, and there were moments where it sounded like she was talking in tongue. She was. I get another call and answer. This time she says, I'm out of the Uber, but I'm somewhere I don't know. I am beginning to think I am being catfished. I sent her my location, and she sent me hers, but her GPS was not appearing on my phone. She calls again, and I reply with, hey, not really wanting to waste my time with this. It's been 45 minutes. I have told you where I am. You have asked me where I am every phone call since. Not sure how clear I can be, to which I hear her scream through the phone, F. Well, that ambient noise could be heard at the not-too-distant future, because I could see her a few streets up standing by the curb. I go over to her, and she is somewhat cooked. I don't know what she was on, but if I had a guess it was probably meth. She went from super colorful in personality to absolutely dark and negative. This went back and forth within minutes. I am walking back towards Naked for Satan, and decide that maybe I should go to a bar that I won't mind never going back to, as I had already was beginning to plan my exit. We get to the order, and I order 2 drinks. She was back to being level again. I ask her about her writing, as she said she did music journalism, to which she took off her jacket, pushed her cleavage in my face, and started talking in tongues again. Without even taking a sip of my drink, I told him, "I'm a weird fucker, but you're too fucking weird for me," and bounced out of there. I sent her a text shortly after saying that, "I'm not sure what was with you tonight, but you are a mess and your aggression etc. was unwarranted. Hope you're okay. Get home safe." The next morning I went to check up on her, but she had blocked me on everything. She playfully flirted, "No, suck your own D," 2 feet in front of me on our first date. The problem? She was on the phone with a co-worker in a hushed tone. So the backstory, we were also co-workers and had been talking and flirting for a while. She actually insisted we finally go on a date. I'm ecstatic, to be honest. We meet in front of a coffee shop and just talk for a little while. I remember thinking she didn't seem interested in being there, which was weird because she wanted to do this. I remember at one point she got a call from a co-worker who was covering her shift or something like that. She was very polite and even asked if it was okay to take the call, which of course it was. She had gotten off of work to come out, I think, and or worked a little later in the day. I'm trying to not listen, but a phrase instantly caught my attention. "No, you suck your own dick." And just in case I didn't hear it the first time, she repeated it a few more times. Sadly, the words themselves weren't even the worst part, it's how she said it. Imagine if the person on the phone was Brad Pitt, insert any famously attractive person, and I was a shit-coated beggar. That is how I interpreted the difference in tones she had with the person on the phone and me. The worst part? I didn't leave then. Maybe 10 or so minutes later, we were walking to an Italian ice place, and I told her I heard her on the phone and was not okay with it. Her initial response was complete shock that I had heard. "Of course I did, you were 2 feet in front of me," and then she denied it. Either right after or not too long later, I said again I was not cool with it. I think at that point she just pretended it never happened. Worse still, I stayed even longer. But I was FING defeated at this point. The moment I left was after she asked, "Are you seeing anyone?" Which I was left literally unable to answer. After what felt like an absolute eternity, I think I muttered out, "No. I mean, we are on a date. A date you wanted, you asked for. You literally called it a date." She went on to say she wasn't either. After that, my brain shut down for 10 to 20 seconds until I made my decision. She had mentioned earlier she only had 1.5 hours and she needed to go back to work. I remember this and had my out. I told her I was going to go. She seemed very surprised and asked why. I lied and said she had to go back to work soon, and I didn't want to keep her. I talked to her via text a couple days later. She said she asked me if I was seeing someone was meant to get me to open up. She still completely ignored what happened on the phone call. She called me 1 to 2 times in the week after, I think. She had done that many times before the date when she would get off of work. I ignored then. She even came back to my pharmacy a few months later. She seemed like she was testing the grounds to see how I felt about her. Obviously, I wanted absolutely nothing to do with her. At that point, I honestly regretted knowing her. That happened 4 years ago, was the first date I had been on in years. I haven't been on a date since. Honestly, at this point, I'm afraid of what the universe will do next. Hold my dark matter and watch this shit. I'm a woman. Went on a date with a guy from a dating app many years ago for brunch on a weekend. We were both in our very early 20s. The only thing I requested in my profile was no one who smoked. The smell makes me nauseated, even if it's on clothes. And no one with kids, because I am not interested in that baggage life for myself. Sorry. It was clearly indicated in my profile. No smokers. No kids. That's it. Everything else goes. Guy shows up. Looks like profile, good sign. And we sit down to order plenty of pancakes and omelets. Have a great 2-hour brunch with plenty of getting along and laughing. I pay for all of it because I don't like owing anyone or feeling like the guy should pay all the time. I do this with most dates because I can afford to. Then he tells me that he knew I wouldn't go on a date with him if he had told me the truth about himself up front. I get scared. What truth? My mind goes to many places. He said he had to meet me in person and have a date so that I would see how great he is and compatible we are with each other before he told me what would otherwise have driven me away. I'm like, okay, what is it? Him. I have a wife and kid. We're getting a divorce though, so it's fine. Oh, and I also live 2 hours from your town to raise my toddler when I have shared custody of him. Me. Okay. Thanks for telling me. It's no big deal. I understand why you wouldn't want to tell me through messaging. He just wasted 3 hours of my weekend and $60. I was furious. I would not date a liar, and I hate having my time wasted. I also am not interested in someone who is married or is getting a divorce. If someone said they didn't like skinny people in their profile, I wouldn't convince them to go on a date with me and surprise them with my low BMI to prove to them how great my other qualities are. I decided I would see how far I could take this date to show him how lying isn't acceptable. Me. I don't want this date to end, but I have a spa appointment in 30 minutes across town. Want to join me? They have free wine and tequila there. He says yes, and we make our way over to my favorite cheap-ass Asian crotch waxing salon, where they don't give a fuck if they make you bleed, but a Brazilian only costs $30 plus tip. No one speaks English that well, and it's not clean. I asked him if he ever got his downstairs waxed. He says no. I asked him if he wanted to. I said it doesn't really hurt. It actually hurts way worse the first time. I told him he should get the Brazilian with me at the same time since the rooms are connected. I made it sound like it could be adventurous and a little sexy. I told him I would hold his hand while it happened. I said it felt no worse than pulling off a Band-Aid. OMG, what a big lie. I totally pressured him into it. I could tell he was calculating the likelihood of a second date if he didn't do it. He agreed to the Brazilian. That's a full wax of your belly button to dick shaft, balls, and butthole. All of it. Everything gone. We went back to the wax room where there were 2 beds. They drew the curtain between the 2 beds and told him to get naked from the waist down and lay in diaper change position on the table. That's when you hold your legs like a baby with your jennies on full display. My wax lady came into the other half and started doing my wax. His hand came out from under the curtain and found mine. I held his hand and laughed under my sweater as he yelped with every pull. The manager had to keep coming into his side of the wax and telling him to stop yelling as it was scaring other people at the spa. I was laughing. His wax lady was laughing. The manager was laughing outside the door. He got through it after a very long 25 minutes. I walked out and never returned any of his messages. I lied about how much it would hurt. I left him with the bill for his balls. We were even. I matched with a girl on Tinder today. The profile was ambiguous, just a picture of her laying down on her belly, no bio. I usually start with a creative message derived from the pictures or bio. I decided to just message her. I don't have much to go off from your profile. What has come to mind is that you have a nice looking but, she responds. Want to touch my butt in person? You can read the rest of the conversation from that image link. Bottom line is, we decided to meet at my apartment and that I would give her $40 for some weed. This felt like a whole new level of trashy for me. So far in life, I have only had sex with 4 people, and I make a serious attempt to date them. I asked my friends what I should do. They said it did not seem too sketch. I was going to say no, until I thought to myself, hey dude, when you are an old man, you will regret not having casual sex with a stranger more than not knowing what could have been. I end up giving her my number, and she calls me. There were a few things over the phone that gave me a bad feeling. First, she sounded way too casual over the phone. It felt like I was scheduling an appointment with a receptionist. Second, she thought that we were doing this at her place. I asked her if she had roommates, and she responded yes. I told her that it made more sense to do this at my place since I live alone. She ends up hanging up. I am thinking, alright, whatever, this all seemed too good to be true anyways. She calls back 3 minutes later, saying that she lost cell phone reception for a minute. This was the final item to make me feel uneasy. In hindsight, she was obviously lying. The amount of time between calls was far too long for her to have just lost connection. She agreed to do this at my place. I insisted that we get coffee first, so I can make sure I am not bringing a wacko into my apartment. She agreed to that, and I am feeling more comfortable now. She just asks for a ride, which was not a problem for me. I leave to pick her up and get $40 for the bud. Up to this point, I was feeling really nervous about going through with this. Then while I'm actually going through with it, all those thoughts disappeared. I am just thinking to myself, tonight is going to be fun. I am about to get a little high with a cute girl, play some Mario Kart with her, watch Netflix, get my D wet, and maybe even cuddle. Little did I know, I am about to get majorly bamboozled. The address she gave me was not listed. I call her, she says just to meet her at the Rite Aid on the corner. This is when I should have known to back out. However, at this point, I am dead set on eating pussy. I meet her at the Rite Aid parking lot. She actually looks like her profile, and all the nerves are gone again. She said we could expect her dealer to show up any minute. She gets the call 2 minutes later. I am thinking to myself, what kind of drug dealer is this prompt? But me being a gullible idiot, I give her my $40 anyways. Then she meets some dude on the corner, and they walk off together, not to be seen again. I immediately realize that I have been played. She texts me, "You are beat sorry," and that was that. Was I mad? No, not at all. The situation could have been far worse. It could have been more money. She could have been an undercover cop. She could have been lying about her age. I could have been beat up by her boyfriend. I could have gotten an STD. The list goes on, folks. Right now I feel 3 things. I feel great shame. This is not the guy I am. I am just lonely and would have appreciated some sexual comfort. I also feel really bad for her. She must be in a tight spot to have gone through with that. I am sure that she needs my $40 more than I do. Finally, I feel really unlucky as yesterday was my cake day. If this could have happened just 1 day earlier, my post would have been gilded for sure. Ladies and gentlemen, what did we learn today? If a situation seems too good to be true, it is. Get set up by my friend's fiancé with a new coworker. We were introduced at a party, then decided to go out for some drinks, etc. She is educated, intelligent, fun, gorgeous, well-dressed, but can't find a good guy, according to all sources. We head out to this great little place, now closed sadly. First 2 hours, we are having an amazing time. We kiss, it's electric. I like her, and she really likes me. We decide to order another couple of drinks and some food. We are having a good time together, already set up another date. I decide that I want to see where this will go, so I'm not going to let this first date wind up in bed. I want to see her again, she's great. Then it starts. I can't tell if it's the booze or she's just been well behaved up until then. Our server doesn't come back with our order quickly, and that bitch better hurry with my drink. Did she get lost or something? She laughs, then quietly mutters, "Fucking kike." I'm not sure what she says at first. Note, the friend that set us up's husband, my best friend, is Jewish. Then as our order comes, the floodgates appear to open, and more gradually her mouth spews bile, racist and other, every few sentences directed randomly at people she sees nearby or comments in general. WTF happened to the gorgeous, intelligent girl I met here 3 hours ago? I'm not drunk, a bit tipsy but still in control. She's intoxicated, so I decide that I've had enough, and it's getting worse, so we have to go. We chose a place close to where she lives, so it would be in walking distance, and I decide it's not safe for her to walk alone, and I'll grab a cab afterward. The walk was brutal. I've got a super horny Jekyll and hide on my arm, trying to get her home ASAP, so I can GTFO. She's loud as shit now. She practically yelling about the fact that she wants me to do XYZ to her when we get home, and she's gonna break my dick off and ruin me for other women. She bellows at anyone looking at her strangely because they are a/and insert horrible phrase here. She gets closer to me and tells me how great I am, and she wants to see me again tomorrow, not the weekend when we originally planned, totally oblivious that I'm certain this will be our last date. Get her to the door of her building after a brutally long walk. Should have been 10 minutes, took almost an hour because she was a total mess. A scene ensues at her door when I won't come in. I tell her my ride pulled up out front already. I've got to work early, and we have had too much to drink for this. Don't you like me? Don't you want to fuck this? She flashes her amazing breasts at me and pulls up her dress. I get to see the full show. You don't know what you're missing? You can't get it up, can you? Are you fucking gay, you fucking faggot? Don't call me you piece of shit. I'm telling everyone you have a small dick, you faggot. This takes less than 2 minutes. I say goodnight, and I escape quickly down the stairs. She texts me saying, "FCK, oh you ashall you are regret sigh," or some other bad drunk typing pre-autocorrect. I escape home. The next 2 days are interesting, trying to explain to my friends what went wrong while receiving texts and ducking calls that left voicemails, all indicating Had a great time. Sorry if I misbehaved a little on the way home. Wish you'd stayed over. Can we see each other sooner rather than later? Don't you like me anymore, etc. Thank God I was a kid, 15-ish. But I met a girl at an away game for my high school's basketball team. Got her number, spoke for a couple weeks, then planned to come over for dinner with her family. At the time, when my body could handle it, I used to pride myself on eating the spiciest buffalo wings I could find. Well, girl flexed how her dad makes the spiciest wings ever. I boldly called her bluff, so she had her dad make wings that night and made his special batch on the side for me. Well, I ate every drop, despite dying inside and dripping gallons of sweat. It wasn't maybe 40 minutes after eating that those motherfuckers shredded their way through me and had to come out the other side to say hello. So I went to the bathroom and proceeded to crap out half of my body weight. Flushed. And the fucking toilet fucking overflooded with my fucking poop. I literally sat on the sink countertop and watched my brown sludge as it approached and went over the top, all over the bathroom floor. I wanted to just sneak out and find a neighbor I could call my mom from to pick me up, but it was one of those bathrooms under the staircase, and the family/living room was a direct shot from the bathroom. So the second I would step out, I'd be facing them sitting on the couch. Decided to bite the bullet, cracked the door open, and quietly summoned the girl over. Maybe she'll be understanding, I thought. Nope. The second she could see the floor, she screamed for her mom. Mom came over. The second she could see the floor, she screamed for her husband. The second the husband came over, he screams, F-U-C-K. The girl ran upstairs and left me alone with the parents, and I had to watch, mortified, as the mom begrudgingly cleaned my floor-spanning poop. She was sure to make crystal clear, as she hauled the poo-dripping bathroom rug, how expensive it was. I offered to help, but anything I said or asked was cut off with a stern, curt no. My mom finally pulled up, and I jetted out of the door. I couldn't even tell my mom what happened. I was so humiliated. And sharing with my best friends became a mistake, because they constantly held telling people about my mishap above my head to get me to do what they wanted. Finally, I learned to say fuck it, embrace my embarrassment, and release myself of their blackmail chains by recording a rap song and releasing it to the wild. I had never spoken or seen the girl again. Dates are meant to be enjoyable and fun, right? No, not for me. I have had 17 dates in the last few months, and yeah, there have been good and bad ones, but this one was by far my worst. My name's Emily. I'm a second-year uni student, and this is the story of how I ended up trapped in an escape room with the most competitive, unhinged guy I've ever met in my life. It all started on Hinge, and started talking to a guy called Dan. I recognized him from one of my classes previously, and that helped to break the ice. Rather than the usual coffee date to start, he suggested an escape room. At first, I thought, okay, that's kind of fun and different. I mean, I'd never done an escape room before, but I'd heard they were a laugh. Plus, it felt like a low-pressure way to break the ice meeting up face to fact. The night of the date, he turned up and was cute, taller than me, important. And he had this easygoing smile I fell in love with. The usual awkward first date pleasantries lingered, but disappeared quickly. The theme of the escape room was a bank heist, which sounded cool. We were supposed to break into the vault and solve a bunch of puzzles to steal the cash before the cops arrived. The guy at the front desk gave us a quick rundown, handed us a clipboard, and wished us luck. Little did I know, I was about to be locked in a room with someone who took the phrase teamwork makes the dream work and set it on fire. The moment the timer started, Dan went from charming to, well, let's just say intense. The first puzzle was this simple lockbox with a combination, and I was trying to piece together the code when Dan swooped in and snatched it out of my hands. Here, let me do it, he said, not even looking at me. I'm really good at these. Okay, I said, stepping back and trying not to feel completely useless. He fiddled with the lock for about 5 seconds before barking, check the table. There's got to be something else we're missing. I blinked at him, a bit taken aback, but I didn't want to seem like I wasn't pulling my weight, so I started rummaging through the fake bank documents on the desk. Not there, he snapped, like I was some kind of idiot. Look under it. Under it. It was around this point that I started to realize this wasn't going to be the fun, light-hearted bonding experience I'd imagined. Dan was pacing around the room like a man possessed, muttering under his breath about how we were wasting time. Every time I tried to contribute, he either ignored me or shot down my ideas. At one point, I found a key hidden inside a fake plant, and instead of saying, good find or nice job, he said, took you long enough. I just stood there holding the key, wondering if I could use it to unlock the door and escape his attitude. It didn't stop there. The more puzzles we faced, the more unhinged he became. He was barking orders at me like we were on some kind of reality TV competition, and the prize was £1,000,000. Read the clue again. No, not like that, slower. God, this is so easy. How are we not getting this? By the time we hit the halfway mark, I was actively avoiding eye contact with him and debating whether I should fake a stomach ache to get out of there. But the real low point came when we got stuck on this riddle involving a series of numbers. Dan was standing in the middle of the room, gripping his hair like he was about to rip it out. "This doesn't even make sense," he shouted, slamming his hands on the table. I looked up at the camera in the corner of the room, the one the game master watches, and silently prayed for them to intervene. And they did. The voice of the game master crackled over the intercom. "Would you like a hint?" "Yes, please," I said immediately. "No," Dan practically shouted, glaring up at the speaker like it had personally insulted him. "We don't need help." At that moment, I wanted to disappear, or at least crawl under the nearest table and wait for the timer to run out. We eventually escaped with about 2 minutes to spare, but it didn't feel like a victory. Dan, however, acted like we'd just won the World Cup. "See? I told you we'd crush it," he said, grinning like he'd single-handedly solved every puzzle. "Yeah," I mumbled, already planning my excuse to leave. As we walked out of the building, he turned to me and said, "That was fun, right? We make a great team." A great team? I spent the entire hour feeling like an unpaid intern on a project I didn't sign up for. When he asked if I wanted to grab a drink afterward, I told him I had an early lecture the next morning, a blatant lie, and made my escape. As soon as I got home, I texted my flatmate, Liv, and told her the whole story. She was laughing so hard she nearly fell off her bed, which, honestly, fair. I blocked Dan on Hinge that night. This didn't happen during the date, but after our one and only date. This happened almost 15 years ago. I was working abroad at the time, and I met an incredibly aesthetically pleasing lady at a coffee shop and absolutely had to chat her up. We exchanged numbers, and we went out for drinks later that week. While the date went off all right, I felt like something wasn't quite right, so I told her at the end of the night that I had a great time, but I didn't think we had much in common. She seemed okay with this fact, thanked me for my honesty, and we parted ways with a hug. A couple days later, I get a text as I'm leaving the office from her asking if I can meet up because she needed to talk to someone. I'm not going to be jerk and say no, especially since she sounded desperate, so I told her to meet me at the coffee shop where we first met. She showed up with a suitcase, looking incredibly disheveled and obviously having recently cried. We sat down to start talking, and she started telling me how she was in a bad place, got involved with a lot of hard drugs, was turning tricks on the street to fund said drugs, and just got kicked out by her mom. While I'm trying to absorb the deluge and not choke on my coffee, she asked if she could stay with me. Nope. I told her I wasn't comfortable with the idea since we didn't know each other, and asked if she had anyone else to turn to, which led to more crying. We were starting to cause a scene, so I then offered to get a room for her at one of the local hotels, using my travel points, but she didn't have to know, so that she could at least have a place for the night while she sorted things out. She accepted on the condition that I at least stay a while with her for comfort. We check in, head to the room, and sit down to start talking some more. I then realize that it's relatively late, and I have to get up early for work, so I make these facts known. She breaks down some more, which leaves me conflicted to the point that I reluctantly stay, and I tell myself that I have a pretty good excuse for my boss in the morning. A few more hours later, I really need to get to sleep, so I tell her that I'm just going to sleep in the one bed, so I can get some rest before my day starts, and she can have the other bed to herself. She goes to start getting ready for bed, and I fall fast asleep. I wake up roughly 30 minutes later, probably around 4 a.m.-ish, incredibly groggy, but something is definitely not right. I'm still trying to focus because I slept in my contacts, so my eyes are taking a minute to adjust. There's an arm draped around me. Why do I feel wet and sticky? Then I notice all the red. She cut herself and crawled into bed with me. Instant panic mode. It took everything I had to swallow my heart a couple times as it desperately attempted to escape. I called down to the front desk asking where the nearest hospital was. No time to explain. I'll pay for the room, etc. I don't remember carrying her out to the car, wrapped in the drenched bedsheets, nor do I remember the drive to the hospital. I only remember carrying her through the front door and yelling for help. The staff rushed over and took her away, and I was immediately sat with 2 officers and a nurse doctor, who started asking me a lot of questions. I answered as honestly as I could, but noticed my peripheral was starting to turn black. Then fainted. I eventually came to, and so did the girl. Thankfully, she corroborated my side of the story, and that there was no foul play. I don't want to know what would have happened otherwise, considering I was a foreign national on a work visa. I've avoided talking to girls in coffee shops since. I later found out she was a self-inflictor and had cuts up and down her thighs as well as her arms. She had taken some sleeping pills and started cutting herself. Then the pills took effect, and she just laid down next to me. She didn't slit her wrists, but that's not something I was looking for at the time. While desperately trying to figure out if she was breathing, she was, of course. Given her comatose state from the pills, I thought the worst when I couldn't get her conscious. My story is like something out of a true crime podcast, but unfortunately, it was real life, and I was the one who had to figure out how to escape before my life was in danger. I met this boy, Adam, on Bumble. Handsome man, polite, chatty, the usual. The biggest plus for me was his love for dogs. That is a huge win in my eyes. After a week or so of texting, sending each other pics of our beloved furry friends, he asked if I wanted to grab some drinks. I wasn't getting any weird vibes, so I agreed. The date started like any other. We met at a fairly busy bar not far from my place. Adam was good-looking, well-dressed, and friendly. He asked me lots of questions about myself, what I studied at university, where I was from, whether I liked to travel, and of course where my love for dogs originated from. He seemed genuinely interested in me, and I remember thinking, wow, this guy's actually nice, unlike my previous partners and dates. But looking back, there were little things that felt off. Like how he kept steering the conversation back to my family, asking if I was close to them, whether they lived nearby, if I had anyone I relied on. At the time, I thought he was just being curious, but now it makes my stomach turn. After a couple of drinks, he suggested we head back to his place to keep the night going. I hesitated for a second. I'd only just met him, after all. Booty didn't want to seem paranoid. Plus, he lived close by, and I figured I could leave any time if things got weird. So I agreed. When we got to his place, it was a bit messier than I expected. Not like serial killer Lair messy, but enough to make me question how much effort he really put into having people over. There were empty takeout containers on the counter, random clothes tossed on a chair, and the whole place smelled faintly of stale beer. That's when I started to feel a little uneasy. Not terrified, just off. Adam, however, seemed perfectly at ease. He offered me a drink, but I declined, saying I'd already had enough. He laughed it off, saying, "You don't trust me?" in this joking but not really tone. I laughed awkwardly and changed the subject, but the vibe was definitely shifting. I told him I needed to use the bathroom, and he pointed me down the hall. As I walked through his apartment, I noticed more odd details. The locks on the inside of the front door were strange. Heavy duty, like something you'd see on a warehouse, not a flat. There were no pictures on the walls, no signs of a life lived in this space. Just stacks of random junk and a few pieces of mismatched furniture. I stepped into the bathroom and locked the door behind me, taking a moment to just breathe. Something about this whole situation felt wrong, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I splashed some water on my face, trying to shake the uneasy feeling, and that's when I noticed the window. It was small, just above the toilet, and it looked out onto the street. As I glanced out, something caught my eye, a van pulling up in front of the building. It was black, no windows in the back, the kind of vehicle you see in crime dramas when someone's about to get kidnapped. 2 men got out, both wearing dark clothes, and they walked around to the back of the van, opening the doors. My stomach dropped. I don't know why, but something about the way they moved, the way they looked around like they were checking to see if anyone was watching, it set off every alarm bell in my head. I froze, watching as they pulled out what looked like restraints. Rope? I couldn't tell exactly, but it was enough to make my blood run cold. I immediately thought, I need to get out of here. Now. Right F now. I unlocked the bathroom door and quietly made my way back toward the main room. Adam was standing by the window, looking out at the street. When he saw me, he jumped a little, like he wasn't expecting me to come back so soon. "You okay?" he asked, his voice overly casual. "Yeah," I said, trying to keep my own voice steady. "Actually, I think I should head home. It's getting late." His expression changed, just for a second, but long enough for me to notice. It was like he wasn't expecting me to leave. "Oh, come on," he said, forcing a smile. The night's just getting started. No, really, I said, grabbing my jacket. I've got an early morning. He stepped in front of me, blocking the door. Why are you in such a rush? He asked, his tone sharper now. You're not scared of me, are you? My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to stay calm. Of course not, I said, laughing nervously. I just really need to get home. Maybe we can hang out again later this week. He stared at me for a moment, like he was trying to decide whether to let me go. Finally, he stepped aside. All right, he said, his voice cold. Let me walk you out. No need, I said quickly. I'll be fine. And then I bolted. I didn't stop running until I was halfway down the block. I glanced back just in time to see Adam standing in the doorway, watching me with this furious look on his face. The van was still parked out front, and the two men were now leaning against it, talking quietly. I didn't stick around to find out what they were planning. When I got home, I locked every door and window and called my best friend, telling her everything. She begged me to report it to the police, but I didn't know what to say. Hi, I think my date might be a human trafficker. It sounded insane, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The weird questions about my family, the strange locks, the black van. I don't know for sure what would have happened if I'd stayed, but I'm not interested in finding out. I matched with a girl using the highly successful and scientifically proven dating act we find ourselves currently on. We'll call this match Jen. Jen seemed nice, lolled at my shitty humor, talked good and proper, and asked when we might be meeting up. I suggested a place. She told me when to be there. Onwards, towards my record book we raced. I went into this with zero expectations. It was Tinder, after all. But my choice of a wine bar had been met with overwhelming approval, so I thought maybe something positive might come out of it. Then I saw Jen, and I wanted something to come out of it. She looked substantially better in person than on the app. A reverse catfish, if you will. She had come straight from work and still carried the aura of being focused and unstoppable. Something one would expect from an early 20s NYC girl who was still taking on the world and not yet driven down by defeat or cynicism. Except Jen was 28 and might be interested in me, so it was even better. When she looked over at me, a metamorphosis occurred. Her professional demeanor transformed from a defense attorney honing in on a lead witness error-filled testimony to a child who just received that Christmas puppy they wanted after all other presents had been exhausted. I actually had butterflies in my stomach. Jen and I do a friendly hug, and the first thing I notice is her perfume. I don't know what it was, but she smelled amazing. I get an image in my head courtesy of Hollywood. Us laying in bed post-sex like carefree actors with perfect hair, great lighting, and a lack of towels required to clean up certain bodily fluids. We sit as the server lays down the dinner menus, says he'll be right back, and with a glance at my watch, the clock officially begins, 8:12 p.m. I only know because she had said 8, and I have an irrational fear of being stood up. I needed to verify I was overanalyzing that thought. I'm already a quarter into my drink, having arrived around 8, and needed something to calm myself. Jen peruses the wine list while we engage in the initial pleasantries. How nice she looks, adventures on the MTA to get here, and other small talk. I browse the dinner menu, trying to figure out what I can stomach against my newly arisen, alcohol-resistant jitters. I spot my food of choice, a duck confit salad, and close the menu as Jen flags down our server and orders a Riesling. So far, so good. After her order, she leans into the table, showing some eagerness to talk. Jen has a hell of a smile and brightens up almost on cue as I ask about what she does. The small talk turns to worthwhile discussion as her drink gets dropped off. She tells the server she's ready to order. Apparently, she's already been here and knows what she wants without having to look at the menu. Jen orders a braised pork dish, hands the menu to the server, and sips her wine. Server looks at me, and I order my duck confit salad. Jen noticeably has a moment where I think the wine went down the wrong pipe. She recovers fast, and instead of coughing, she's just staring at me with this look of disdain. At this point, I'll mention that my employment consists of public relations for an organization that is not well liked. A day I perform well at work is a day where I am able to be in a very stressful, often hostile, environment while staying together, thinking on my feet, and getting the message out. It happens frequently, and I do my job rather well. I say this not to talk myself up, but to prove just how disastrous the following was. "A salad?" I want to say she bellowed it, but really, I was just so caught off guard it came off as loud as a bullhorn. The server, and myself, not sure what to make of this look at her with confusion on our faces. His quickly disappears into the menu he's now holding. I reply, "It's got duck in it?" Years of experience as an orator are on full display in this crowning moment as my rhetoric resonates across the table. A salad? Do you know how that will make me look as I'm shoveling braised pork into my mouth? The server realizes that the table near the bar, which didn't flag him down, suddenly needs his attention, and he'll be right back to see if we need to change our order. Again, I do PR. This is where I work best, on the defensive. I look her dead in the face and say, "Is this a body image thing or something?" She loses it. I can't even comprehend what she's saying, because I'm so mortified at the ignorance I just blurted out. The barrage of fuck yous, assholes, and other obscenities hit their mark, killing my stomach butterflies where they flutter. I start picking up that I'm making her look like a pig, which, consequently, I ask what I just ordered. I am literally speechless. She, and everyone else in this place, are just staring at me. Maybe yes, I don't know. I finally get the urge to speak up and apologize profusely for making her feel that way. I tell her I will order something else. We can start over, and this is just a silly little. Did you just fucking say silly? That was it. I was done, preparing for wine to be thrown in my face. Instead, she just stands up, grabs her bag, gives me the finger, and just yells out, "F you." The restaurant is dead silent as we all watch her leave. She kicks a chair as she was leaving and yelled again as, I assume, she broke her toe. More silence, except for one guy just trying to silence his laughter a few tables away as his companion is saying, "OMG, stop. That's not funny. I would die." I agreed at the time, but now I think it's one of the funniest things that's ever happened to me. I just sat there for a moment and noticed the server standing at my table looking down at me. I glance at my watch, 8:29 p.m. I offer a pleasant smile and ordered the duck confit salad, but please not the braised pork. I was likely dining alone that night. So I had my salad. It was FING amazing. Another glass of my red, her Riesling, and a pretty decent dinner. The server tried to comp 2 of the glasses of wine, but I just tipped him out the comps because he did nothing wrong. I don't know if it was all serious or she was just fucking around with me. She unmatched me sometime after she left, and that was that. So there it is. I wrote quite a bit of this on the train this morning, pre-coffee, post forgetting my Kindle, presently being stuck because of a police investigation at a station. Hope you enjoyed it. This is the story of my second day using Tinder and my very first Tinder date. It's Tuesday. I matched up with this girl, I'll call her Elle, and we chatted back and forth for a bit. She's cute as hell, and I suggest meeting up, and I try to find a nice neutral spot near her where we can get together. She invites me to a barbecue with some of her former co-workers. I'm pretty hesitant to this at first, as I don't want to meet someone for the first time at some barbecue. Well, I caved and I ended up meeting her at this barbecue, and in all honesty, it was pretty fun. Elle and I are getting along pretty well. She's trying to feed me shots of rum. I don't have any because I have to work in the morning. And all is pretty damn great. Anyways, barbecue comes to an end, and she abruptly says, "Okay, I'll talk to you later," and leaves. Confused, I drive my ass home, and as soon as I get off the freeway, she shoots me a text saying, "You could have come over to my house if you asked." I tell her I still can. She shoots me her address, and I turn my ass around and speed to her house. She doesn't live in the greatest part of town, but I was too certain that I was going to get some, so I didn't really care. I pull up to her house, and she meets me out front and greets me as I walk up. As I'm walking up the stairs to her door, she mentions that she takes in stray cats. I'm allergic to cats, but really as long as I don't touch my eyes, it's a non-issue. Also, I'm thinking she probably has maybe 4 cats at most. These thoughts are running through my mind as I'm still walking up the steps when she says, "Yeah, so I have like 15 cats," and then opens the front door. The front living room was pitch black, but I saw at least a dozen pairs of eyes all turn and look at the now open front door. Then they all scattered like a bunch of cockroaches. Now I haven't broken stride this entire time, and continue right through the door. As I crossed the threshold, I thought I had walked through a goddamn wall as the smell that washed over me was horrific, and it felt like it had weight. Cat piss. Undeniably, it was pure cat piss from 15 unwashed stray motherfucking cats. There isn't a light on in this house, but I can still see stacks of bins all over the room, like it was something out of one of those hoarder TV shows. From the tops of these rubbish towers sat some of the cats, peering down at me. Elle quickly ushers me to her room, which happens to smell like bleach, as my nostrils have started to burn from a smell other than cat piss. She mentions having just cleaned her room and having scrubbed everything down with bleach, as if that's a normal thing to do when you clean a room. Any sane guy probably would have backed out well before now. And I should have too, but I had come too far and my cock was way too hard to turn back now. We get comfy on her bed, and she puts on Netflix. This is before I knew Netflix and chill was a thing, but I knew where things were going. She picks a Saw-esque type movie called Adrenaline, I think, and makes herself comfortable as the little spoon. I make some advances during this fucking horror movie, and she's completely unresponsive. So after about 45 minutes of nothing, I tell her I need to get home and go to bed since it's 2 a.m. and I have work in the morning. During my entire time at her house, I tried really damn hard not to touch my face, but I knew since walking in there was no way I was getting out unscathed. I drive home, and my eyes are itchy as hell and are starting to water. After getting home, I look in the mirror, and my eyes just look like total shit, completely bloodshot and itchy. The allergy has never lasted more than a couple hours after starting, so I went to bed and figured I would be fine by the morning. Boy, was I wrong. I wake up with my alarm at 4:45 a.m., bleary-eyed and feeling like total shit, as I expected. My eyes are heavy, and I can barely open them as I shamble to the bathroom to take a shower. I flip on the light and see, or rather barely see, a fucking horror show. My right eyelid had swollen out to the point where it was nearly in line with my brow, and was completely swollen shut. My left was not much better. Even worse, it felt like sand had been poured in both of them. I had to call in sick to work and go to the doctor to get a prescription to bring the swelling down, when it looked like it wasn't going down after a couple hours. I text Elle mentioning that apparently I was more allergic to cats than I remembered, and I never got a response. Swelling took about 5 days to go down completely. Crazy cat lady. Not much of a horror story, but I can say this is one I probably won't forget since I was actually scared for my life. Little background story of my life for the past 5 months. I've been having a lot of issues trying to sleep. Get into bed around October 11th, and I won't be asleep till about 3 to 5, constantly tossing and turning. So, I wouldn't call myself a Tinder addict, but I have been using it for quite some time, and actually have gone out on a lot of Tinder dates. I'm known as the Tinder veteran by my friends, and even my younger sister. Anyways, this guy and I matched probably 2 months ago now. We hit it off. And I would be a liar if I didn't say he was good looking in his pictures. We ended up texting and calling for about a week before deciding to meet in person. We ended up picking a day after I worked, and it was supposed to be a local bar close to where I work. Keep in mind I worked half an hour drive home work. So fast forward to the big day. I didn't end up sleeping till about 5 a.m. this day, and had to wake up to go to work at 7. Worked a full 12-hour day, and left work to meet with this guy. By this time I didn't realize how tired I actually was until I got to my car. I thought about texting him to ask to rain check, as I really wanted to go home, and just lay down or take a bath. Instead I sucked it up, and went to go meet him at this bar, which was supposed to be 5 minutes away. Ends up being 15 minutes away from work and 45 minutes away from home. Ugh. I follow my Google Maps to a part of town I have never been to, arrive at the location, but end up soul-seeing the block 5 times cause there were 0 signs indicating that the bar was at this location. End up parking my car in this dimly lit parking lot, looking for this place. Scared shitless, I start thinking up of all these awful scenarios that would happen to me. So, I see all these people leaving this old beat-up looking building. I looked and saw a wooden sign that had the name of the bar written on it. Now this just reminded me of a bad horror movie or something. But having made plans and being one to not stand people up, I get out of my car and walk to the front door and go inside. Texted the guy saying, "I'm here, where are you?" Instead of getting a reply like, "Oh, I'm sitting by wherever," I get, "Come inside, I'm here." Like, okay, I know you're here. Odd. I go inside, stand by the door looking for the one person who might be looking toward the door. Finally, this guy sitting at the bar looks at me, and I walk up to him. Bam, it hits me, he looks absolutely nothing like his pictures. Now at this point I thought, just leave, you don't owe it to this guy who lied online any of your time. But I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I went and joined him. We start talking, but he's super shady. He's already eating, and probably had a couple drinks as he was there beforehand with a buddy or something. I explained my situation of the day, and apologized for my mediocre company. To which he was annoyed at, and though I was lying. We didn't end up talking much as he was constantly on his phone and eating, so I ended up just sitting there watching highlights of a basketball game, trying to understand what's going on. He finally puts his phone down and starts saying how I should relax a bit more and have a drink instead of water, that I should share his food with him and also give him a kiss on the cheek. I didn't agree and politely declined each one of his offers, to which he did not take well. He started getting angry toward me and a bit aggressive, pulling on my chair, trying to get my sweater off of me, trying to touch me, and so forth. Then he went off to call me snobby, the worst company ever. Mind you, I never have my phone out when I'm on a date to be polite and let them know that they have my full attention, that I'm lazy and not worth his time. At this time, he was starting to get a bit more physical, so I finally stood up and told him if that's how he feels he shouldn't contact me anymore, and I was going to go home. I was shaking so much when I was leaving that I had no idea what to do other than to run to my car. Left the bar as fast as I could, calling one of my friends, thinking that he might have had someone waiting outside to kidnap me. Ran to my car, started it, and I was out of that parking lot faster than you can say uncle. It doesn't sound as bad, but he was not the guy I remember talking to or calling. This didn't happen during the date, but after our one and only date. This happened almost 15 years ago. I was working abroad at the time, and I met an incredibly aesthetically pleasing lady at a coffee shop and absolutely had to chat her up. We exchanged numbers, and we went out for drinks later that week. While the date went off all right, I felt like something wasn't quite right, so I told her at the end of the night that I had a great time, but I didn't think we had much in common. She seemed okay with this fact, thanked me for my honesty, and we parted ways with a hug. A couple days later, I get a text as I'm leaving the office from her asking if I can meet up because she needed to talk to someone. I'm not going to be jerk and say no, especially since she sounded desperate, so I told her to meet me at the coffee shop where we first met. She showed up with a suitcase, looking incredibly disheveled and obviously having recently cried. We sat down to start talking, and she started telling me how she was in a bad place, got involved with a lot of hard drugs, was turning tricks on the street to fund said drugs, and just got kicked out by her mom. While I'm trying to absorb the deluge and not choke on my coffee, she asked if she could stay with me. Nope. I told her I wasn't comfortable with the idea since we didn't know each other, and asked if she had anyone else to turn to, which led to more crying. We were starting to cause a scene, so I then offered to get a room for her at one of the local hotels, using my travel points, but she didn't have to know, so that she could at least have a place for the night while she sorted things out. She accepted on the condition that I at least stay a while with her for comfort. We check in, head to the room, and sit down to start talking some more. I then realize that it's relatively late, and I have to get up early for work, so I make these facts known. She breaks down some more, which leaves me conflicted to the point that I reluctantly stay, and I tell myself that I have a pretty good excuse for my boss in the morning. A few more hours later, I really need to get to sleep, so I tell her that I'm just going to sleep in the one bed, so I can get some rest before my day starts, and she can have the other bed to herself. She goes to start getting ready for bed, and I fall fast asleep. I wake up roughly 30 minutes later, probably around 4 a.m.-ish, incredibly groggy, but something is definitely not right. I'm still trying to focus because I slept in my contacts, so my eyes are taking a minute to adjust. There's an arm draped around me. Why do I feel wet and sticky? Then I notice all the red. She cut herself and crawled into bed with me. Instant panic mode. It took everything I had to swallow my heart a couple times as it desperately attempted to escape. I called down to the front desk asking where the nearest hospital was. No time to explain. I'll pay for the room, etc. I don't remember carrying her out to the car, wrapped in the drenched bedsheets, nor do I remember the drive to the hospital. I only remember carrying her through the front door and yelling for help. The staff rushed over and took her away, and I was immediately sat with 2 officers and a nurse doctor, who started asking me a lot of questions. I answered as honestly as I could, but noticed my peripheral was starting to turn black. Then fainted. I eventually came to, and so did the girl. Thankfully, she corroborated my side of the story, and that there was no foul play. I don't want to know what would have happened otherwise, considering I was a foreign national on a work visa. I've avoided talking to girls in coffee shops since. I later found out she was a self-inflictor and had cuts up and down her thighs as well as her arms. She had taken some sleeping pills and started cutting herself. Then the pills took effect, and she just laid down next to me. She didn't slit her wrists, but that's not something I was looking for at the time. While desperately trying to figure out if she was breathing, she was, of course. Given her comatose state from the pills, I thought the worst when I couldn't get her conscious. My story is like something out of a true crime podcast, but but unfortunately, it was real life, and I was the one who had to figure out how to escape before my life was in danger. I met this boy, Adam, on Bumble. Handsome man, polite, chatty, the usual. The biggest plus for me was his love for dogs. That is a huge win in my eyes. After a week or so of texting, sending each other pics of our beloved furry friends, he asked if I wanted to grab some drinks. I wasn't getting any weird vibes, so I agreed. The date started like any other. We met at a fairly busy bar not far from my place. Adam was good-looking, well-dressed, and friendly. He asked me lots of questions about myself, what I studied at university, where I was from, whether I liked to travel, and of course where my love for dogs originated from. He seemed genuinely interested in me, and I remember thinking, wow, this guy's actually nice, unlike my previous partners and dates. But looking back, there were little things that felt off, like how he kept steering the conversation back to my family, asking if I was close to them, whether they lived nearby, if I had anyone I relied on. At the time, I thought he was just being curious, but now it makes my stomach turn. After a couple of drinks, he suggested we head back to his place to keep the night going. I hesitated for a second. I'd only just met him, after all. Booty didn't want to seem paranoid. Plus, he lived close by, and I figured I could leave any time if things got weird. So I agreed. When we got to his place, it was a bit messier than I expected. Not like serial killer lair messy, but enough to make me question how much effort he really put into having people over. There were empty takeout containers on the counter, random clothes tossed on a chair, and the whole place smelled faintly of stale beer. That's when I started to feel a little uneasy. Not terrified, just off. Adam, however, seemed perfectly at ease. He offered me a drink, but I declined, saying I'd already had enough. He laughed it off, saying, "You don't trust me?" in this joking but not really tone. I laughed awkwardly and changed the subject, but the vibe was definitely shifting. I told him I needed to use the bathroom, and he pointed me down the hall. As I walked through his apartment, I noticed more odd details. The locks on the inside of the front door were strange. Heavy duty, like something you'd see on a warehouse, not a flat. There were no pictures on the walls, no signs of a life lived in this space, just stacks of random junk and a few pieces of mismatched furniture. I stepped into the bathroom and locked the door behind me, taking a moment to just breathe. Something about this whole situation felt wrong, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I splashed some water on my face, trying to shake the uneasy feeling, and that's when I noticed the window. It was small, just above the toilet, and it looked out onto the street. As I glanced out, something caught my eye, a van pulling up in front of the building. It was black, no windows in the back, the kind of vehicle you see in crime dramas when someone's about to get kidnapped. Two men got out, both wearing dark clothes, and they walked around to the back of the van, opening the doors. My stomach dropped. I don't know why, but something about the way they moved, the way they looked around like they were checking to see if anyone was watching, it set off every alarm bell in my head. I froze, watching as they pulled out what looked like restraints. Rope? I couldn't tell exactly, but it was enough to make my blood run cold. I immediately thought, I need to get out of here. Now. Right F now. I unlocked the bathroom door, and quietly made my way back toward the main room. Adam was standing by the window, looking out at the street. When he saw me, he jumped a little, like he wasn't expecting me to come back so soon. "You okay?" he asked, his voice overly casual. "Yeah," I said, trying to keep my own voice steady. "Actually, I think I should head home. It's getting late." His expression changed, just for a second, but long enough for me to notice. It was like he wasn't expecting me to leave. "Oh, come on," he said, forcing a smile. "The night's just getting started." "No, really," I said, grabbing my jacket. "I've got an early morning." He stepped in front of me, blocking the door. "Why are you in such a rush?" he asked, his tone sharper now. "You're not scared of me, are you?" My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Of course not," I said, laughing nervously. "I just really need to get home. Maybe we can hang out again later this week." He stared at me for a moment, like he was trying to decide whether to let me go. Finally, he stepped aside. "All right," he said, his voice cold. "Let me walk you out." "No need," I said quickly. "I'll be fine." And then I bolted. I didn't stop running until I was halfway down the block. I glanced back just in time to see Adam standing in the doorway, watching me with this furious look on his face. The van was still parked out front, and the two men were now leaning against it, talking quietly. I didn't stick around to find out what they were planning. When I got home, I locked every door and window and called my best friend, telling her everything. She begged me to report it to the police, but I didn't know what to say. Hi, I think my date might be a human trafficker. It sounded insane, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The weird questions about my family, the strange locks, the black van. I don't know for sure what would have happened if I'd stayed, but I'm not interested in finding out.